Happy Friday, everybody. How are you guys doing? Everyone doing good? Any plans for the weekend? Indian Premier League? That's cricket, right? Apple picking. Studying. Studying, ha 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 ha. Kirby, I'm not sure why that's funny. Barbecue, that sounds good. All right, have exam. What's my plan? I am tutoring a lot tomorrow. So, Greg Matt never stops. Never stops. All right, so what we're going to do in this class is we're going to finish up speaking, everybody. We're going to finish up speaking, which means we do have some work to do. So before we get into it, we did have some homework, and the homework was about question number 3. I gave you 3 of those, but we're only going to talk about one of them because of time. So the way that I approach this, if you guys remember, whenever I look at the reading passage, am I reading it or am I looking for things? What am I doing? I'm not really reading. I'm not really reading it. It's not like I'm going, oh, university official, oh, okay, that's interesting. No, what I'm really looking for is, let's use a different color here. Number 1, I'm looking for the change. Something is happening. In this case, what is that, everybody? What are they going to do? They're going to build a new stadium, right? They're going to build a new stadium on campus, a new athletic stadium or something. Is it on campus? I don't know. It doesn't matter. All right. And then what am I looking for after that? I'm looking for the 2 reasons why. So watch how quickly we can do this, right? Okay, so usually the change is the title, and now you're just looking for the reason. So here we go. Number 1, help the university achieve its goal of attracting top students. I'm not sure why a top student gives a shit about this, but apparently they do. The official also said that additionally, see the word additionally here, doesn't this indicate reason number 2? Additionally, building a new stadium would allow the university to strengthen its relationship with the town, since a new and larger stadium would have the space to seat not only students, parents, and alumni, but members of the local community as well. Okay, this is such a weird one. We're going to build a new stadium so we can sit members of the local community. So reason number 1, you attract those elite students. Number 2, you can strengthen link to local community. Pretty easy, right? Don't you guys think so? It's not that hard, right? All right, now we're going to listen. And with listening, before we actually listen, can you guys remind me what it is I'm listening for? Can you guys remind me, por favor? So number 1, the opinion from either the man or the woman. Then it's going to be the reason. Then it's going to be the detail. Remember, most of your score comes from the listening. Reading number 2, and then detail. So in total, how many things am I looking for, including the reading? In total, including the reading, you're looking for 8 things. 5 from the conversation, 3 from the reading. Are you guys ready? Here we go. Let's listen to this.
Now,
Can you guys hear that? Now. All right, here we go.
listen to 2 students discussing the article.
So what do you think of the university's new plan?
Oh, I don't know. I don't think it's going to work.
No?
I mean, I can't imagine top students being too thrilled about some of the conditions on this campus.
What do you mean?
Like the science laboratories having such old, outdated equipment, and the library needing more books, and the student center being so small. I think that the $2 million could be spent in better places if the university is really serious about achieving its goal.
Okay, but what about the other reason for building the stadium? I mean, right now we have so little contact with the town.
Yeah, but this won't help relations. Look, people from town hardly ever come to games because our teams always lose, and they're not suddenly going to improve overnight. Besides, adding seats won't make a difference. I mean, if people from town didn't come before, They won't come now just because the place is bigger.
The woman
Okay. So the woman is clearly displeased with this plan. What's her first reason, everybody? Will it attract top students? No. So it will not attract the top students. It doesn't matter how you phrase that. You could say that the top students don't care. You could say that they should spend the money in another way. It doesn't really matter. Those are all the same thing, okay? Those are all the same thing. But here comes the actual detail. What do we need for the detail? Something about the laboratory, right? The laboratory is no good. What they say, the library has not enough books or something like that. And then finally they had the, what was the last one? The student union or something? The student center, something like that. You probably only need one or two of these. You don't need all three. Okay, what's the second reason? She said that this won't work because the teams are terrible. They always lose. And then the detail was they don't come now, right? You know, even with the stadium as it is. So just adding more seats is not going to magically make them come. Won't magically make them attend. Cool. That's it. All right. Let's take one volunteer. You have to speak for 1 minute. All right. We have a volunteer with Alina. Let me make sure I have everything set up here. Okay, can everybody see my little nifty timer here? All right, let's go. Hey, Alina, how are you?
Hey, Greg. Yeah, I'm good.
Are you ready?
How are you? 1 second. Yes, I'm ready.
Okay. You may begin speaking now.
An article mostly discuss a change on the campus that they're going to build a new stadium for two reasons: to attract top students and also to enhance relationship with the town people. However, women in the conversation doesn't think that this is going to help. First of all, because top students are not going to be attracted by this stadium, and because this is not a good idea for them, and the campus conditions are not that good also. For instance, library doesn't have enough books, and student center is still too small. And second of all, she thinks that this is not going to help attract town people also, because they don't come to games. Because the team is always loose. That's the reason why they don't come. So Eden Mosis is not going to help
Okay, so let's stop right
attract
there.
them.
So I would probably, you're kind of on the border is what you are. So I wouldn't be surprised if like the human gave you a 3, the computer gave you a 4, the human gave you a 4, the computer gave you a 3. Worst case scenario, it's going to be a 3 and a 3. And let me just give you 2 pieces of concrete advice. Number 1, you did make a couple of grammar mistakes. So for example, the reading passage is discuss. So it has to be discusses, right? You said woman and not the woman. You also had one pronunciation mistake with the word enhance. Right there. So that's more of the language. The last thing is, you'll notice at the end, this second reason was kind of rushed, right?
Yeah.
Like, so you didn't get a lot into the detail. But again, it wasn't a bad response. It really wasn't.
I was nervous a bit.
Yeah, it wasn't a bad response. It's not like it gets a 2. My guess is it would be in between a 3 and a 4, or worst case scenario, a 3 and a 3. Okay, so thank you for volunteering. All right, guys, we don't have much time, so let's get into the new stuff here. Okay. So just like with question number 2, with question number 3, you have to know what you're looking for. So let me kind of show you what I'm looking for when I look at the reading passage. So we're going to do this one pretty slowly. We're not going to time ourselves. What I'm looking for here is some kind of academic concept. with a brief definition. And just like in question number 2, you can usually look at the title. So the establishing shot is the academic concept. Okay? Now we do need a brief definition. Everyone read this for about 20 seconds. Give me a brief definition of the establishing shot. Okay, so it's going to be that opening shot that gives context, right? Opening shot that gives context. Now here's the important bit. You have to find a way to organize this information. And what I always do is I look for 2 things. They're not always reasons. So this is a little bit harder than the one before. They're not always reasons. It's more like 2 supporting ideas. Think about it that way. So supporting idea number 1, what would you say in this reading passage here? Everyone go ahead and take a look. It looks like it's going to be right here. One purpose is to communicate information like the setting, where and when. So idea number 1 is not communicate background information. It's most likely going to be setting. More specifically, where and when. Now you'll notice why I'm focusing on this thing right here, because in the lecture, the speaker is going to give an example. And do you think the speaker is going to give an example of a setting? Yes or no? Yes. Do you think it's going to tell you where? Yes. Do you think it's going to tell you when? Yes. Try to find supporting ideas that have examples. Okay, number 2. What would you say is the number 2 idea? The number 2 idea is going to be the mood or the feeling. The mood or the feeling. Okay. Now, watch how I would speak this. So remember, I'm doing question number 3 right now. I would say this. The reading passage introduces the idea of the establishing shot, which is the opening shot that gives context in a movie or TV show. And it really gives information about 2 things, about the setting, where and when, and also about the mood or feeling of the scene. The lecturer provides an example of each one of these supporting ideas. See that right there? So talking about the reading only took me, about 15 seconds? So let's do that one more time. The reading passage introduces the idea of the establishing shot, which is the opening shot in a movie or a TV show that gives context. And the reading passage talks about 2 supporting ideas. The first is it gives information about the setting, where and when. The second is it gives information about the mood or the feeling. So in that case, it was a little bit longer, but still, I have how much time to talk about the lecture? 40 seconds. Which is what you want, because remember, where does most of the score come from? It comes from the listening. Now the question becomes, we're about to do the lecture here, everybody. When I listen to this lecture, am I just listening or am I listening for something specific? I'm listening for something very specific. Number 1, setting. Something about the setting. Number 2, something about location. And when. So when I hear them talk about a location, do I want to write it down? Heck yeah. When I hear them talk about a year or a time, yes, write it down, write it down. And then finally, when they talk about the mood or the feeling, you want to write that down as well, right? Does everyone follow me here? The reason why people have trouble with this question is they don't know what they're looking for. So now you guys know. We're listening for something about the setting, where and when, and we're listening for something about the mood and the feeling. Okay, are you guys ready to listen? All right, here we go. Let's take a listen.
Now listen to part of a lecture on this topic in a film class.
So, the other day I went to this great new movie, and one of the scenes in particular I thought was really set up nicely. At the start of the scene, before the action and talking and things started, you saw on the movie screen an image of a city. You could tell it was a big city. There were lots of buildings, tall ones, skyscrapers. And the cars and signs on the city streets looked old-fashioned, like they were from the past, like the 1940s. The other thing I noticed right away from this first image, just when the scene started, was that the city seemed gloomy. You couldn't see much because it was, well, there was mostly darkness rather than sunlight, and there was only just a little bit of light from the street lamps. On top of that, it was raining and kind of foggy. All of these details worked together to create a dark, gloomy, mysterious feeling. So then, when the action started and it showed detectives talking to each other in an office, I already knew that the office was located in a tall building in a big city sometime in the 1940s. And I had a good idea that the events that would be taking place would be pretty dark and mysterious because of the shot, the image I saw at the beginning of the scene.
So you can see he kind of over-explained himself at the end there. We were just sitting there for 30 seconds going, okay, yeah, we get it, we get it, we get it, we get it. The reason why that was kind of easy for us is because we knew what we were looking for. Didn't I tell you to look for where? Look for where, everybody? So where is it? It's in a big city with a lot of tall buildings. I then told you to look for when, right? Well, they said the cars were old and the signs were old, so 1940s. We were then looking for a feeling, the feeling being gloomy, dark, little light, rainy fog, dark, mystery, right? You guys get the idea. So if this was the real TOEFL, you would have about 30 seconds to organize your thoughts. So everyone go ahead and take those 30 seconds right now. Okay, so here's how I do this one. What I do is I say the reading information in like 15 to 20 seconds. And then what I do is I basically use the examples to keep going back to the supporting ideas. So remember, supporting idea number 1 is setting, where, and when. And then supporting idea number 2 is about the mood. So let me show you what I do here. Okay, here we go. The reading passage introduces the idea of the establishing shot, which is the opening shot in a film or TV show that gives context. And it really gives 2 pieces of information. It gives the setting, where, and when, and it also gives the mood or feeling of the scene. The professor gives an example to illustrate these 2 supporting ideas. For example, he saw a movie that gave the setting, the where, and the when because the opening shot showed a city with very tall buildings, so it was probably a big city. Also, he saw old cars and old signs, so it said that this was probably the 1940s. So it gave information about where and when. The opening shot also gave information about the mood, which was very gloomy according to the professor. It was dark, there was little light, it was rainy, it was foggy, and it presented this gloomy, mysterious, again giving information about the mood. So do you see how I'm always going back to these supporting ideas? I'm going back to these supporting ideas. That's kind of how I do it. In fact, the organization here is less important than you think it is. You know, you don't have to say first of all, second of all, you don't have to do that. What you really have to do is you have to show how these examples explain the supporting ideas. Okay, does that make sense, everybody? Okay, let's do that one more time. Let's do that one more time. The reading passage introduces the idea of the establishing shot, which is the opening shot in a TV show or a movie that gives context. And it gives information not only about the setting, where and when, but also about the mood or feeling of the scene. In the lecture, the professor gives an example of these two supporting ideas. He saw a film that opened up in a big city with very tall buildings, so he knew that it was in a big city. At the same time, the cars and the signs looked old, so he assumed that it was the 1940s. So the movie gave information about the where and the when, the setting. In addition, he said that the mood of the opening shot was gloomy because it was very dark and there was little light and it was rainy and foggy. It presented this mysterious, gloomy mood. This example illustrates that the opening shot can really give information about two things, the setting and the mood. Yeah, something like that. So notice I didn't say exactly what I said before, but I'm still doing the same thing. I'm just saying example, example, example. All right, Sophia has a question. Hey, Sophia.
Yeah, hi. So you said that now we have 30 seconds to organize our thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
And I was wondering, what did you exactly mean by that? Like, what do you suggest us to do during these 30 seconds?
The TOEFL gives you 30 seconds to, quote, prepare, end quote. Really what you should do is you should just prepare kind of the order that you're going to say things in. So you're going to talk about the reading passage's idea, give a brief definition, talk about the two things, then you're going to say in the lecture. So it's kind of you just kind of preparing yourself to speak in the order that you want to.
So do you think we should like write something down?
Oh, definitely. Oh, yeah. I mean, you should take notes. Like your notes should look very similar to my notes right here.
No, I mean during these 30 seconds.
Oh, sure. If you want to. Yeah, if you want to. If it helps you.
Okay, yeah, thanks.
Mm-hmm. Let's go to Muslim Banu. Hey, how are you?
Hello, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Oh, so I have a question. Should we talk about supporting ideas in the reading section, or can we just say the definition and jump to the listening section?
If you jump to the listening section, it's not going to kill your score, right? Remember, because most of the score comes from the listening. So if you kind of shortchange the reading, that's not a disaster. I typically like to talk about the ideas from the reading because it makes it very easy for me to structure.
Mm-hmm.
Right. It makes me very easy to structure. You know, like for example, I can just, if I say the two supporting ideas at the beginning, I can keep going back to those. I could say the lecture supports these two supporting ideas, something like that.
Okay, I see. So it's okay, right? Not to say those.
Yeah, I mean, but I think you're making the task more difficult.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, I think you're making the task more difficult.
Oh, because it takes much time to read the text. That's why I was asking. Thank you.
Yeah, but it is important that you identify those two supporting ideas from the reading. That is important. Zubaiter, how are you? All right, let's go to Ayushi. Hey, Ayushi, how are you?
Hi Greg, I'm fine. How are you?
Pretty good.
My question is it important like how we start? I find myself, stuck. I don't know, like if I should
The
say
reading
in the
passage introduces the idea of blank. The reading passage introduces the idea of blank.
and in case of listening,
The lecture gives an example to support the reading passage or to support the reading ideas, the supporting ideas, something like that.
okay.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Yeah, just try to memorize those phrases. Yeah, because I know a lot of people have trouble starting. Just try to memorize those phrases. All right, everybody. Are you guys ready to try this by yourself? Okay, here we go. So we're gonna do this relatively slowly. But I'm not gonna tell you the answers. Okay, everyone, you have 50 seconds. Find me the concept. Find me the brief definition, and try to find me two supporting ideas. Okay, good luck. Okay. Can I have a volunteer to tell me what the idea is and how they would organize the two supporting ideas? All right, let's go with Alina. Okay, Alina, what's the idea?
Hi, Greg. Yeah, the idea is this perceptual constancy. This is a phenomenon that when an environment in which object appears, it's changing, but we still understand that this is the same object.
Yeah, so I would so like you have to be flexible here, right? Because remember, you're trying to get these two ideas, right? So I would even say that the first idea is the definition. You know, it's basically like this: even as conditions change, we still recognize they remain the same, right? So
Yeah, that's
even I would put that as idea number one. Even with
yeah.
change, we still recognize, because you know they're going to give an example about this, right?
Yeah, but I said that this supporting ideas is like angle and distance to the object, no?
It could be. Yep. Like I said, you have to be kind of flexible here. This question is the hardest one, so you do have to be flexible. An object viewed from one angle to our eye. Okay, fair enough. You could use that. Yep. You could use this as the definition, and then use this idea of angle and distance. Okay, that could be the supporting idea. All right, I'm with you. Angle and distance. Okay, and then what would you do with the second idea?
I said like angle is the first one and distance in the second one.
Okay, fair enough. Not bad. Like I said, you can be flexible here. You can be flexible here. You know, we don't have to have the same answer. You could also do this one. You could say, if we didn't have it, we might not recognize the same object. You know, that could be this last sentence here.
I see. I
Yeah,
see.
if we don't have, we might not recognize, something like that. Okay. But again, I think you did a pretty good job. So the passage or the lecture might be giving an example about angle, distance. Something is going to change, right? I guarantee you. You know, something's going to change, and he's going to say, we still recognize, something like that. Okay,
Yeah,
good
I
job.
see. Thank
Yep,
you.
good job, Alina. All right, now it's time to do the lecture. And remember, write down the examples that support these ideas, which means write down about something changing. Write down the fact we still recognize it. Maybe the angle or the distance changes. Write that stuff down. And then finally, the author might give an example about if we didn't have this, we might not recognize it. Are you guys ready? Are you guys ready? Let's do it. Here we go.
Now listen to part of a lecture on this topic in a psychology class.
Let's take an everyday example, an ordinary round plate like you'd find in a kitchen. If you hold the plate directly in front of your face and look at it, what shape do you see? A perfect circle, right? Suppose you tilt the plate to a different angle, to a horizontal position, like you're planning to put food on it. Still a perfect circle? No. The circle is now stretched out, flattened into an oval. Do you conclude the plate has actually changed shape, or that it's a different object, not the same plate? Of course not. It looks different, but we perceive it as still being the same. Here's a different example. This classroom we're in, it's fairly large, right? Now, from up close, from the front row, I appear to be relatively big. Bigger than if you were in the last row, right? But let's say you're sitting in the front row today, but tomorrow you're sitting in the back row. From back there, I'm going to look smaller, but you don't think I've actually gotten smaller. You don't think you're seeing a different professor, a guy who looks like me except he's smaller. No matter where you are, up close or far away, you understand without even thinking about it that I'm the same size, the same person.
You'll notice that all of these examples deal with what idea? There was an example of distance. There was an example of angle, right? Remember, you hold it directly in front of your face and then you tilt it. There was also the example with distance, where if you go from the back to the front, right? So I think Alina did a very good job identifying this, right? In the more general sense, things were changing, right? So the way that Alina organized it, I think, was very smart. Perceptual constancy, number one, is about angle. That was the example with the plate, right? Was it not? That was the example with the plate. And then number two, the example of distance. That was the example with the professor. So, Alina, good job. All right, guys, I need a volunteer, but remember, before we take the volunteer, you have 30 seconds to collect your thoughts. Okay, can I get a volunteer? Sophia, did you want to volunteer?
Yeah,
All right, are you ready?
a little terrified, but yeah.
Why? Why are you terrified? This is fun, right? TOEFL on a Friday morning?
I've never done this question before, so
Remember, keep organized. Here's my advice. My advice would be follow Alina's organization. So remember what Alina's organization was. You give the concept. You give maybe a short definition. You talk about the supporting idea one, which would be something about angle. And then supporting idea number two, something about distance. And then with the professor's lecture, you just talk about the plate example for angle and then the distance example with the professor. Does that make sense?
yes.
Okay. All right. You may begin speaking now.
The reading passage introduces the idea of perpetual constancy, which basically means that when things seem to be changing, we still recognize them the same. Sorry.
No problem. Remember, use the organization. So
Yeah,
you had a really good start, but use the organization. Say the reading passage says this is true even if the angle or the distance changes.
Yeah, okay.
By saying that, then you can immediately go into the example, right? The professor gives examples to support both of these ideas, something like that.
Okay, thank you.
So here's my advice. My advice is really use the organization. The reading passage says this happens even if the angle or the distance changes. By using the word angle and distance, that sets you up for the examples. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Okay. All right. You may begin speaking now.
The reading passage introduces the idea of perpetual constancy, which means that when things, then the way we see things change, we still recognize them the same. For example, when an angle or distance changes. In the lecture, we're given an example to support this idea. And first, the man gives an example of a plate. When we see it directly in front of us, it's round. And when we put it on a table in horizontal position, it stretches into an oval. It looks different, but it's the same, and we recognize it. The second example was classroom. In a classroom, when he is in the front row, he seems big to us. But when we see him from the last row, he's smaller. But it doesn't mean that he got smaller. It just means that we see him differently, but we still recognize him the same.
Pretty good. Just like Alina in the previous example, I would probably... Oops, I didn't mean to mute you. Are you there?
Yeah.
Okay, I would probably put you in between a 3 and a 4. So you're somewhere in the middle here. The only thing that I think you could have done a little bit better is tie the idea back to angle and back to distance. Remember when you were giving the example of the plate, did you use the word angle?
No.
No. So what I would have said is, this shows that even when the angle of the plate changes, we still recognize it. Notice how I'm bringing it back to the reading?
Yeah, good point.
Yeah, same thing. When you gave the example about the professor, you said the front and the back, but you never used the word distance, right?
Yeah.
Had you done that, had you said angle and distance, I definitely would have given it a 4.
Yeah, okay, I get it. Thank you.
Yep, good job. Yeah, good job. Okay, so everyone, that is question number 4. Or question number 3. Does everyone understand that? Does everyone understand how that works? I promise you, if you can organize the reading passage into two ideas like angle and distance, it makes it much easier. Much, much easier. All right, before we talk about the last question, here is my example. Here we go. The reading passage introduces the idea of perceptual constancy, which means even if the way we look at things changes, we can still recognize the object. And the reading passage says this is true even if angle or distance changes. The lecturer provides two examples to support this changing of angles and changing of distance. First of all, he talks about if you hold a plate in front of your face, it appears like a circle, but if you put it down, it looks like a stretched out oval. This shows that even when the angle of the plate changes, we still recognize it as a plate, though. The second example was about distance. He says when a student is in the front of the room, the professor looks big, but when the student is in the back of the room, the professor looks small. So even when the distance changes, however, the student can still recognize that this is the professor. So the only thing I did differently than Sophia is I just used the word angle and distance when talking about the examples, right? That's really the only thing I did differently. Remember, try to tie it back to those two supporting ideas. Okay, any questions? Hey, Dana, question?
Yes. I'll ask you just general about this question and the last one. Regarding the organization, you say that the listening is more important and we have to put 40 seconds for it and 20 seconds for the reading.
Yeah, something like that. I would say 20, 40, yeah.
Yeah. What if we I don't know why I'm taking 30 by 30, but I'm able to say all the information. But the problem is, I think why I'm putting 30 because I go into the details. Like, for example, in the stadium one, I kind of went into the details of the 2 million and the issue of the people, and I think talking about the community and who are they going to say. When do we stop at the details? When shouldn't we mention them?
Pretty much with the reading, I mentioned no details.
No details.
Yeah.
Just the main idea.
Yeah, and the two reasons, yeah. I'm not saying that you would get a bad score. I'm not saying that. But it is a very big risk because the more you talk about the reading, the less you talk about the listening, right? And most of the score comes from the listening. So it is possible to get a high score and go into detail with the reading. That is possible. These are just suggested templates, suggested structures. But you are taking a risk because if you only give yourself 20 to 30 seconds to talk about the listening, it is possible that you could run out of time.
I guess also the problem with the reading is that you don't have time to write all the details.
Yeah. They don't expect you to get all the details from the reading. They don't expect you to.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Let's go to Mangalam. Hey, Mangalam.
Hello, Greg.
Hey.
Am I audible?
You're audible.
Yeah. So I wanted to ask that in these type of questions, always there will be only two parameters, say angle, distance, or like
pretty much, yeah. I mean, like I said, when TOEFL designs these, they have to be standardized or not standardized.
Oh, standardized.
They have to be standardized, right? Which means they're very, very predictable about what they do. Do you remember in the first example, wasn't there two parameters, setting and mood?
Yes.
In this one here, there were two parameters, distance and angle. So the TOEFL is very predictable.
So could there be a question in where there can be three possibilities?
I suppose it's possible, but remember, we're dealing with such short time frames here. 50 seconds, 60 seconds. It would be very difficult to explain three ideas in 60 seconds.
Okay.
Make sense?
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
Greg, just one more thing.
Sure.
And I actually want to thank you for all your GRE lectures. As I gave my GRE this Monday, I viewed all your lectures which were there and I scored 315. So I really thank you for all your videos.
Congratulations.
And all that you are doing.
Yeah, no problem.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem. Congratulations.
Thank you.
All right. Alina, did you have a question?
Yeah, hi Greg.
Hey.
I have a question about this this reading passage about the new stadium building. The first reason why the woman didn't like this idea, I thought does it matter that I thought this is because like the other campus conditions are still in?
Yep, that's okay.
still bad. That's
Just
fine,
as long
Okay.
as you give a reason and detail. Like,
Yeah,
if you
yeah.
say, hey, the campus conditions are not good, and then you give details about that, no problem.
Yeah.
But at the
so,
same time,
yeah.
I could say she feels like it's not going to attract top students.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter as long as you give like a
Mhm.
detail.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. Because remember, they're not really looking at your ideas. I mean, they are, but they're really just looking at your ability to organize information, your ability to speak fluently and naturally, stuff like that. All right, guys, let's go ahead and talk about the last question. So the last question is a lecture. And just like everything else, it is very, very, very predictable. Let me show you how it works. So what they do is they give a class like biology. They then give a concept like evolution or selection or something like that. They then split that concept into two parts. So for example, they could talk about natural selection and they could talk about artificial selection. Artificial selection. And then finally what they do is they give an example. So natural selection would be like the long neck of a giraffe. And then artificial selection would be something like chickens who have such big, breast meat on the front of their bodies that they cannot even fly anymore. Do you think that happened naturally, or did that happen with humans? I mean, obviously that was a human thing, right? Humans, choosing the chickens that had the biggest meat and stuff like that. So, that's kind of how these things work. So they give a class, they give an idea, maybe they give a brief definition of it, some kind of brief definition. They then split it into two parts and then give an example of everything. Let me show you how you would speak this. The way you speak this is easier than you think. You just go down the line. Check this out. This lecture is from a biology class and discusses evolution, more specifically the idea of selection, which means that the environment can kind of alter the makeup of a species. The first kind of selection is natural selection. The professor gives an example of a giraffe who has a very long neck because over thousands of years, these giraffes were better able to reach the food, thus better able to breed and to have babies. Thus, over time, the giraffe neck got longer and longer and longer. The key idea is this happened naturally. There was no human involvement. The second kind of selection is called artificial selection, which involves humans. The professor gives an example of chickens who have very large breast meat on the front of their bodies. This is something that humans artificially selected for so they could have more meat. And that is how the professor showed about selection. Something like that. So you'll notice I'm just going doon, 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 doon. Does that make sense? Just like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah. All right, guys, are you ready to try this? Okay. I told you this one's easier than the question before. This question right here? This is by far the hardest speaking question. You guys agree that this is the hardest one? Yeah, this one right here is the hardest one. Okay, here we go, everybody. Let's go ahead and listen to this. Take notes, take notes, take notes. Your notes should look like this right here. All right, track 104. 104.
Now listen to part of a lecture in a creative writing class.
As writers, you want the dialogue in your story to have impact. Well, there are many ways to do that, and I'm going to talk about two of them: exaggeration and understatement. Now, understatement is the opposite of exaggeration, but you can actually use them both to do the same thing, to create emphasis or impact. Let's compare them and see how they do that. Okay, exaggeration. When you want your characters to emphasize a point, you can have them describe things or their feelings as bigger or more extreme than they really are. For example, your main character comes back from a very long walk and she's very tired. Well, you can have her say, boy, I'm tired. Or you can have her say, I can't take another step. Well, of course she can take another step, but you see, if she exaggerates, she'll make her point in a more forceful and interesting way. But you can also create emphasis with understatement. And like I said, it's the opposite of exaggeration, but it does the same thing. With understatement, you emphasize by saying less than you mean. That sounds paradoxical, so I'll give you an example. From real life. My friend Ed is a very talented cook. So last week he cooked me a delicious meal. Now I could have said to him, "This food is really great, Ed, but that's kind of boring." Plus, Ed knew I thought the food was delicious. I'd eaten 3 servings, so instead I said, "This food's not bad, Ed." Now clearly the food was a lot better than not bad, but by understating, by describing the food as less good than it really was, I actually made a stronger statement. The characters in your stories can do this too.
Okay, so let's break this down. What kind of class is it? Creative writing, right? Creative writing class. What is the concept? The concept is giving impact or emphasis, right? Giving impact or emphasis, that's the concept. The first idea is about exaggeration. The example was about a woman walking, can't take another step. The second idea was about understatement, which is the opposite of exaggeration. But she was really saying, hey, it's the same thing. You can give impact, it can give emphasis. And of course, the example is about her secret lover, Ed, cooking her a secret lover meal. And then she said, Ed, it's not bad at all. But in reality, it was delicious. Okay, makes sense? How do you guys feel about this one? Mangalam has a question. Hey, Mangalam.
Yeah, Greg, I've practiced this question like when I was practicing. So I found one problem which I generally face in this question, which is like along with the listening, I am confused at which word should I write in my notes, so that I can immediately, looking at the word, I can get to know what the idea was being conveyed in the lecture. Because I find a lot of problem in catching that word which, for example, you have taken this opposite and then you have taken less, ed, food. So I'm not able to catch those words and, put it in a proper manner. I'm facing this issue and it consumes a lot of time.
Yeah, I'm not saying it's easy. Taking notes is its own art, right? Taking notes is its own art, but it's also personal to you. You have to take notes that allow you to remember this structure. Remember, because is this structure going to change?
No.
No. So number one, you're looking for a class. Agree?
Correct.
You're looking for a concept. Agree?
Yeah.
Correct. You're looking for 2 ideas. Agree?
Exaggeration and
yeah, that's my point. Before you even listen to this, remind yourself what you're looking for. Write down the class, write down the concept, write down idea 1, write down idea 2, and then write down the example. I think that'll help you just really, really kind of remember and memorize this structure.
Okay.
Okay. Just keep working at it. I know taking notes is not always easy. Hey, Dana, question?
No, it's not a question. I would like to try it unless somebody else wants to try.
Yep. Are you ready?
Yes.
So remember, the way that I recommend is literally just kind of going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, just kind of going through it. Okay. All right. You may begin speaking now.
Okay. This is a lecture about creative writing, and it's divided into 2 sections, exaggeration and understatement. Actually, they are the same. That we are going to talk about emphasis and impact. They both say it in the same way. Let's talk about exaggeration. Exaggeration, we do it in bigger more impact, more extreme way. We're going to say it, we're going to give an example. Let's say somebody is going for a walk, a long walk. They're going to say, boy, I'm tired. I cannot take another step. This is exaggeration. Whereas if we're going to talk about the understatement, it's the opposite of that. We say less, like we say less is more. In real life, we're going to give you an example in real life. Like, for example, my friend Ed, he's a talented cook, and he cooked me a delicious dinner last time. It was extremely good, but I wanted to say, I said not bad, and this is how we do it.
Okay, you're not the professor.
Okay.
So you almost acted like an actress, like you were channeling the professor. Now, however, that's the bad news. The good news is you're so good at speaking that as long as you follow the structure, I can pretty confidently say you're going to get a 4 because you're not shy. You were even you're very good at intonation as well, kind of going up and down and stuff like that. So that's the mistake you made, though, is you didn't say the professor. You kept acting like you were the professor. Remember, you're not the professor.
Yeah, I noticed that.
Okay. Number 2, you did not follow the structure exactly. You said creative writing, and then you said the class is divided into 2 ideas. Is that correct? No, you should have said creative writing, and they're talking about what?
About impact and
Impact and emphasis, and then they divide that into 2 ideas.
Okay.
Now, other than those 2 criticisms, I do think you are in line for a 4. I do think so. Okay? Make sense?
Yes, thank you.
All right. Let's go to Zubaida. Did you fix your microphone? Nope. Okay, let's go to Mazambanu. Ooh. The double ghost. Let's go to Shripriya. Hey, Shripriya.
Yeah. Hi, Greg.
Hey.
So, actually, I'd raised my hand to try.
Okay. Do you want to try?
Yes,
Actually, I'm going to have you try the next one, okay? Because we're going to do one more, and then we're going to end the class. Sound good?
All right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, Shripriya, raise your hand at the end, okay? All right, everyone, let's try one more. Here we go. You guys ready? Remember, take notes, follow the structure. We've done this before. The TOEFL's very predictable. We all know that, right? All right. What track? 154. Here we go.
Now listen to part of a lecture in a biology class.
Now, many sea animals, in order to hide from predators, have, over time, developed different kinds of camouflage to help them blend in with their environment and avoid detection by predators. Picture the surface of the seafloor. It's as varied as the land we live on. It's got peaks and valleys, vegetation, rocky areas, and some sea animals have developed permanent colors or shapes to resemble these environmental features. This camouflage helps disguise them from predators by enabling them to blend into a specific part of the sea. For instance, take a kind of fish like the leafy sea dragon. Well, the name says it all. It resembles a small green dragon with leaf-like protrusions sticking out like arms. Now, because of its color and shape, it blends in extremely well with green sea plants. So when the leafy sea dragon is swimming through these plants, predators have trouble seeing it. But when it enters other environments without these green plants, its camouflage doesn't work anymore. Now, other sea animals are difficult to spot anywhere in the sea because their type of camouflage enables them to change color. Take the cuttlefish, a fish that's closely related to the squid and octopus. Unlike leafy sea dragons, cuttlefish have not developed any particular shape to hide from predators, but they have a lot more mobility because their camouflage allows them to blend into any environment. Because cuttlefish have shifting pigments that allow them to change color in a matter of seconds. And so they can almost instantaneously match the color of their surroundings. If they're swimming by green sea plants, they'll turn green. And if they're swimming over the brown seafloor, they'll turn brown.
Using the examples of...
Okay, so this is a biology class. The topic is camouflage in the sea. And for a while, I was having trouble figuring out what the two ideas were, but then I finally figured it out. They're talking about camouflage that changes or doesn't change. So supporting idea number one is camouflage that does not change. Right? That's supporting idea number one. And the example was the leafy sea dragon. Supporting idea number two was camouflage can change. And then the example was cuttlefish. So whenever you do this, guys, you have to find the organization. Sometimes it's easy, sometimes it's a little bit more challenging. All right? Shripriya, here we go. Are you ready?
Yes.
All right. You may begin speaking now.
So the audio was from a biology class which talks about camouflage, and especially taking the example of the sea animals. So it talks about two camouflages. The first one is the permanent one, where the shape and the color is changed by an animal to a specific area of the sea. So here, the example taken is of a leafy sea dragon, which changes which has a color and looks like the sea plants and can blend into these areas, but cannot hide successfully in other areas of the sea. The second type of camouflage is one which can change. Here, the example of the cuttlefish is taken, where the cuttlefish can camouflage by blending according to the color of the surroundings. So within seconds, it changes its color and can hide from its predators.
So, Shripriya, I think that you could not have ended our speaking lectures better, because that was fantastic. Very good.
Thank you.
I mean, that was an obvious 4. I mean, clear 4, unambiguous 4, unequivocal 4. Well done. Now, I mean, I'm not saying that you have to speak like a professional speech person, right? I mean, but you said all of the ideas. I liked the way you organized it as well. You said the first one is about permanent camouflage. You know, it's like, they can't change it. It's just about the shape. The second one is about change. So I liked the organization. I liked all of the ideas. So very good job. Very good job.
Thank you.
You all right? All right, guys. So that is it for the speaking. Let's kind of summarize here. Number one, if you want to be good at speaking, remember, look at the rubric. What are they looking for? They're looking for task completion. Do what you're supposed to do, right? That's number one. Number two, they're looking at your language ability, grammar, vocab, fluidity. Don't worry about the accent. The accent is very difficult to change. I wouldn't worry about it, but you can change your grammar, you can change your vocab a little bit, and you can change your organization. And then finally, speaking of organization, they're looking for organization, coherence, right? They're looking for your ability to organize your ideas. The first reason is, the second reason is, and that's what Shripriya did very well. She did very well of organizing that into two different ideas. So that's general advice. More specific advice is, for each question, remember what you're looking for. If we come back to this guy right here, the new stadium, what were we looking for? We're looking for the change on campus and the 2 reasons, right? Change on campus, 2 reasons. Change on campus, 2 reasons. When we go to question number 3 here, what are we looking for? We're looking for the concept with a brief definition and 2 supporting ideas. In this case, it's going to be setting and mood. In the other case, it was going to be the concepts of angle and distance. So good job. And then finally, for this last question, you're looking for this kind of structure. Class, idea, supporting idea 1, supporting idea 2, example, example. Cool, everybody? Sound good? All right, that's it. That's basically the TOEFL speaking. Next week, we're going to begin our discussions of TOEFL writing. All right, everybody. Talk to you later. Have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.